Hi, I'm Amy Ellis, and this is Finishing Your Quilts on a Home Sewing Machine. Today we're going to get you set up for FreeMotion quilting on your sewing machine. So I thought I'd start with a couple of examples that I've made and quilted on my machine at home. This one is one I made a couple years back, and I actually hand-pieced all these little hexagons and then quilted swirls in the white space on the quilt. It's not too big, which is nice for free motion quilting, especially for someone that's just starting. And it was a really fun piece to work on. So here's one more. This one I quilted loops. Let me give you a little better look. There's lots of little loops, and you almost can't even see them. They just blend into the background of this piece. But both of those are some of the stitches we're going to work on with this class. But first we've got to get your machine all set up and ready to go. So let's move over to the machine. Actually, first let's show you the different feet that are available for free motion quilting. We have this Echo foot that's see-through, and it has seam guidelines on there that you can follow to Echo quilt. There's this tiny little free motion quilt foot. It's a circle. Look for these in your machine, box and see what you have available. This one is the open toe free motion quilt foot, and it's actually my favorite because you have the best field of vision for you to see what you're quilting. So a couple of tools that you should look for at your local quilt shop next time you visit for free motion quilting specifically: quilting gloves. These are a couple different brands, and you just have to try them and see which works best for you. And then this is an alternative to quilting gloves. It's a frame, so you would face it towards you at the machine and hang onto these handles as you're quilting. So you have to see what works best for you, but those are great options for free motion quilting. And I'll put my gloves on in a little bit once we get the machine all set up. So we're going to install this open toe foot now on the sewing machine. And I need to take off the walking foot first. If you went ahead and quilted that full quilt like I asked you to, you should definitely clean out under your machine all the dust bunnies and get it nice and tidy again. Also change your needle, make sure that you have a nice sharp one. Some people have trouble with needles breaking quite a bit when they're first free motion quilting, and thread also. So make sure you look for quality thread, a nice high quality, either polyester or cotton that will be happy with the high speeds is good. And also the needle that I like best, especially for free motion quilting, is the 9014 top stitch needle. It has a larger eye and allows the thread to move through the needle easily without getting caught. I just switched out the bobbin. I put a black bobbin in so that we can make tension adjustments and see where the problem lies as we're getting the machine set up. So I highly encourage you to do that. Put just an alternate color in the bobbin and make sure that you can see what is happening exactly. So we're going to drop the feed dogs, and on my machine, this one that I'm using has a button on the screen, but the majority of machines have a little switch right here on the back, and you can see mine's right here. There's an opening for it. It's not actually a working switch because it's on the front of the machine. So switch that to the down position, and it'll be the little arrows under a line so that they're not engaged. And I've dropped them here on my screen. So if you look real close here, you can see that they're lying under the table, the bed of the machine there. And then you also need to adjust your stitch length down as low as it'll go. Some machines you can get to 0, other ones will be 0.2 millimeters, and that's where this one's at. So just start there. I like to start by not adjusting the tension at all and see what's going on after I stitch, and then make adjustments from there. So I'm gonna start in one corner here, and I'll do a quick stipple and see where our settings are at. There's a lot of trial and error for every machine, and no machine is gonna be the same. So what works for me may or may not work for you, and you'll just have to kind of trial and error and figure it out. So as far as what works just for your machine. Okay, I'm gonna stipple here. If you're having a hard time with doing any sort of stippling, you could maybe just do a straight line with a loop in there. This actually doesn't look pretty bad. Our feed dogs are lowered and the tension is at the normal setting. So I'm going to just tighten the tension a tiny bit to make sure that when I go around these curves that the top thread stays on top and not underneath. So I'm just gonna go up about 2 points. I like to keep my adjustments small so that so I don't overshoot and make too big of an adjustment, because if you do that, then it's just as frustrating if you have to go back. So just little adjustments so that you can figure out what works best. I'm trying to draw up the bobbin thread. I like to draw the bobbin thread up so that I can not have a nest at the bottom, at the back of the quilt, and it's easier to do it with a longer tail. So I just, instead of cutting that, I just left it long. And if you have an automatic cutter, you might think about just using the side cutter instead. I'll use the side cutter myself. So that looks pretty good. There's still a tiny bit of the top thread showing through on the back. So I'm gonna adjust up a little bit more in my tension. I'm at 4.8 now. Let's see how that goes. We'll pull up the bobbin thread and try again. Like I said, not everything's going to work the same for every machine, and even your thread can make a big difference. So make sure that you have, even if they're different colors like I have here, they should be the same weight and the same product. So like if it's cotton on top, you should have cotton in the bottom, and vice versa. So if it's polyester. Sometimes those simple little things can make a big difference in your quilting, so especially when you're trying to sort out all of the tension. So this looks good. I've dropped the feed dogs and I have my tension set at 4.8. And a lot of times I'll actually just write that right on the fabric so that I know exactly what settings I had. So I have my stitch length is 0.2. and the feed dogs are down. So I'm just gonna put an arrow down so that I know. So, and if you keep a sandwich like this around, keep it somewhere handy so that you can reference it again in the future. Another thing I'll do is take a picture with my phone real quick of the settings, but those can get lost pretty easily too. So this works. If your machine does not allow you to drop the feed dogs, or if you've tried and you can't get your tension settings worked out with the feed dogs lowered, a lot of machines might like it if you keep the feed dogs up. So, and if you have lowered your stitch length to as low as it can go and you still have the feed dogs engaged, a lot of times it won't direct your fabric in any way because the stitch length is so tiny. So it'll still work for FreeMotion quilting. And so we're just gonna sort that out again too, because sometimes they really do like it better. It's like they need to have a little bit of control for the tension to be able to properly sort itself out. So I'm gonna start over here in the opposite corner and pull up the bobbin thread, and we'll go ahead and try this one. So Even, you know, the machines that have the automatic tensioner, some of the newer computerized ones, you'll still find that you need to adjust your tension when you're FreeMotion quilting. So don't be shy in sorting that out. And if you're seeing, that doesn't look bad at all. If you're seeing your top thread really loose on top, then your bobbin thread is showing up on top, then you need to lower your tension from its actual setting. This one, there's just a tiny bit of red showing through. So I'm gonna go ahead and adjust my tension up just a little bit. I think I'll do 4.2 and then see how that looks in a minute. If you get frustrated, just take a break, come back and, you know, with a fresh set of eyes and look at everything all over again. A lot of times, if it's just not working, I will rethread the entire machine, double check that it's clean, double check that my needle is good. There's lots of little things that can make the process go poorly. So if you double check everything and make sure it's all in the proper channels as far as the thread is concerned, then, you know, sometimes that's all you need. So even just pull out the bobbin and put it back in real quick. That can make a big difference. The other thing you're gonna need to work on as you start to FreeMotion quilt is your eye-hand coordination, with how quickly you're moving the fabric in relationship to how fast the machine is sewing. And you can go as slow or as fast as you want to, but you need to be able to keep your hands moving at the same rate. There's just a tiny bit of bobbin thread showing, so I'm gonna go up one more notch on the tension and try that once more. So, but you'll figure out what works best for your machine, and we'll get you there. So let's see. I've already adjusted. Let's sew. Let's see. All right, that looks pretty good. There's still a little bit, and I think some of that is I'm going a little bit slow or a little too fast for how fast I'm sewing. So these stitches are a little bit longer than I would normally like, but the tension looks good otherwise. So let me show you a couple of examples of bad tension, just so you have more of a reference. These are some lines that I stitched, and it might be a little bit hard to see because the fabric matches the thread, but there are threads on top right here just hanging out, and that is not what you want to see at all. And then also in this one, you can see the black bobbin is popping up from the back. So that tension is too tight in both these cases. And this one, I think it might actually be threaded incorrectly. So in here, the tension looks a little bit better, but it's still pulling to the back, or pulling from the back to the front. And you can see here, this bobbin tension was super tight. And this one, the back, or the top thread was showing through on the back. So if you have any of those problems going on, you need to make sure that you're adjusting your tension, just like we were doing here. So once you've gotten that all sorted out, we need to work on your speed and your control. So I'm going to put my gloves on, and I'm just going to show you a couple of lines of stitching that you can practice so that you can get more comfortable with how fast you're sewing with your FreeMotion foot. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the bobbin again. And we're just going to do mostly a straight line, but with a couple, kind of make it organic straight, you know, less than perfect. It's fine. Just kind of walk it up and down. But you'll notice that I'm trying to keep my hands moving as a similar rate as the quilt top is moving. So there's a few spots in here where my stitches got a little bit long and then a little bit short. So you want to practice with even just this straight of a line or squiggle of a line. It doesn't have to be a stipple or a loop or anything, although you can if you're comfortable with it. But working on getting your motions fluid with your quilting and with the speed of your machine will really help your overall quilting just feel better and look better. So a couple other things to keep in mind while you're quilting: you really need to relax. So, make sure that your shoulders are loose and you're not hanging on, putting tension on your shoulders where you might get, give yourself a neck ache or a headache. Also, when I can, I like to drop the machine into the table so that I have more flat space to work on, especially once you move on to bigger quilts. And this can also help with just having your elbows and your knees at a 90-degree angle instead of really tight, because like I said, this could cause a lot of tension and make you not want to quilt as much if you're not comfortable. So let's stitch another row of stitching, and I want to focus on the starting and stopping. So especially if you start in the middle, you're definitely going to need to draw up your bobbin thread like we did on that spiral quilting last time. So we'll drop the needle and pull up the bobbin thread. There it is. These little grippy tips can help to pull the thread up too. So I like to take a couple of stitches in place before I actually start stitching. And you can go back and forth a tiny bit just to get those couple of stitches in there tight. And then if I'm starting in the middle and I've done that, it's like a machine knot, and I will stitch a couple of stitches to move away from that area, and then I can clip that thread and not have to worry about sewing over the top of it and making a mess. So let's do that. So then I can just pull this off to the side and clip it, and you can't really tell that's where I started. And then I can keep stitching. So and in the same way, if you were going to end in the middle, or maybe you ran out of bobbin in the middle, something along those lines, you could pull up your bobbin thread after you finish quilting. So I'm going to raise my needle, pull this off a little bit so that I have a little bit of length, and then come back here. And you can knot in the same way, but if you don't have a knot to make, like if you're out of bobbin, then just pull up what's left of your bobbin thread there, and you can tie it off later. So we'll just clip that one, and then I can clip the top thread as well. I'm going to give myself a tail though so that I can knot it off on this one. So just clip that thread, and then you can tie that in a knot, or take it to the back of the quilt and then tie it in a knot, and you'll have a nice clean finish. So also another tip, if I do run out of bobbin, I will usually restitch the last probably 2 inches of what I quilted, just to make sure that those stitches have plenty of strength to withstand use. So I encourage you to sort through your tension and figure out what's going to work best for you and your machine. Like I said, not every machine's the same, so they're all going to react differently. Do take small steps in your tension to correct it. If you go too big, it could cause, you could miss the sweet spot, and then that would just be more frustrating to have to go back and try and find it again. So also take note of where your sweet spot is in some way, whether it is with a photo or making notes in a notebook or even on your practice sandwich, just so that you have a reference to come back to. Usually when I start quilting another project, I will go back to a practice sandwich again and test the thread that I'm planning to use and make adjustments as necessary, because even if I have all the settings worked out, if I change my thread to polyester from cotton or from 40 weight to 50 weight, all those little adjustments will make a difference in your quilting. So you need to make adjustments to your tension as well with those. So sort out your assignment is to sort out your tension for your machine. Also, I need you to practice some straight lines, work on your eye-hand coordination so that you can work in the same speed as your machine is stitching. And that might take adjusting your speed a little bit too. If you find your hands are moving way faster than your machine is stitching, it's okay to turn up the speed a little bit. Just watch your fingers, make sure you take care of those. I also need you to do or set up 2 more practice sandwiches for our next lesson. And in that lesson, we will be showing you a bunch more stitch options for putting into practice on your quilts. And I hope you'll join me then.